Hey guys, welcome to the Only Paint podcast with your host Messenger.
And Tammy.
And today we're going to be doing something really special. We're going to be doing what we actually planned for episode 1, but we tried recording episode 1 a couple times and we were working out some bugs and everything. And we were kind of under the gun with the classes, so we decided just to go ahead and release what was going to be episode 2 as episode 1. So this is now episode 2 instead of episode 1. Which we're going to discuss the origins of Tammy herself.
Boring story.
It's such a long story. I've heard it like 4,600 times. I think I've got like scars for every one of them. It's tough to listen to, really. But if you got to hear it, I'm sorry. If I've got to hear it, then you've got to hear it. So Tammy, how did you get started in automotive paint?
I was born into it, I guess is the best way to put it.
That's weird.
Sorta. My dad, my family is the reason why I'm actually in it. So where he started was in Florida when it came to paint. Mm-hmm. And he always tells a story of me being 5 years old and helping him pour catalyst into containers in our garage.
Mm-hmm. Safe.
Yeah. Probably why I am like I am.
Yeah.
All of that poisoning at a young age. But yeah, that's basically the start of it. He got into it when he left Connecticut, which both my parents are from, moved to Florida, started working with some people and was a salesman for another company, and then slowly worked his way into, other avenues, and it took him into automotive, and then it's just all I've ever been around. It's all I've ever known. Grew up in paint stores since I was a kid, and had a passion for it. Out of any of my sisters, I was the one who had the passion for it.
Right. Okay, you said out of your sisters, you were the one with the passion for it. How many sisters do you have?
2. I'm the oldest, and I have a middle sister
That explains
named
a lot.
Vicky, and I have my youngest sister named Chrissy.
Okay. So your dad was in paint.
Mm-hmm.
You started working in paint when you were a kid.
Mm-hmm.
What came next?
So I guess to fast forward, I grew up in Florida. That's where I was born and raised. And then I left when I was about 12 years old. I think I moved to Virginia in 1996. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of when things started more of me doing things actually in a paint store. So like when I was a kid, kind of like how my kids are now, we're running through a paint store, we're playing hide and seek, we're doing all that kind of stuff, but I'm not actually like involved in doing things in a paint store. I was in school and it didn't work out. But then when we moved to Virginia, and my parents, we left for them to take over a very large jobber store in Norfolk, Virginia. And that's where like I got my feet wet in doing daily things on a regular basis in a paint store. Mm-hmm. So, I'd go there and, I'd help pull orders, and then I would answer phones. And I remember I would do that like on the summers, and then
starting to get that customer service voice.
And then, so I would do that during the summers. And then, if we didn't have school, we would have to go in and kind of help out. And I did that for a little bit. And then even when I was like 13, I would detail people's cars in the parking lot that worked at the jobber store. Right. Just different things to just kind of make money. And that's just always kind of been my mentality, even at a young age. Yeah, the hustler
mentality.
So I wanted money. I wanted to go somewhere, and I would wash and detail people's cars there.
Right.
But then after that, about 13 years old was like the first time I would go into the paint room, and I would like flip through the House of Color book. I had the black binded House of Color book that everybody knows about.
I had the same one, but not at 13.
And that's the first time that I just decided I wanted to make color. And it just kind of inspired me. And I've been very open about the fact that, John Kosmowski is somebody that I have always looked up to.
Yeah.
I think that he has been an icon for the industry. And there's no question that everybody that gets involved in custom paint was absolutely inspired by him.
Absolutely.
Or you wouldn't do it.
Yeah. And it was really neat that he stopped by our booth at SEMA last year.
For sure.
SEMA 24. He came by and got pictures with us and talked to us, and he joked about how he made it easy for us.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, like I said, there would not be what there is today without him.
Right.
And had it not been him, then it may have been someone else, but he is the one. And I've always looked up to that. I always thought it was unfortunate that somebody who later would be part of a paint company, I always felt bad for the fact that he ended up selling out. And I'm sure that, or I've heard that he regrets that decision. But it is what it is. But that kind of paved the way for everyone else that does custom paint. And it paved the way for me.
Right.
So when I was 13 years old, I would go in the paint room, and all we had was Deltron mixing banks, and we had Omni, and we had Concept, and that's kind of what I was familiar with. So once you get an idea and a familiarity with toners and pearls, you kind of know what you can do and what you can't do.
Right.
I always wanted to do things that they said you weren't supposed to do.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my theory, was like, okay, well, I want to create this color, but PPG says this color has to be a tri-stage. And I was like, well, I don't want it to be a tri-stage. Why can't it just be a base coat? So with the system then, and even now to this day, Deltron was all powders, which I hate using powders. I like using liquid pearls now.
It's messy.
But when you're using powders then, you have to put an ungodly amount into a color to kind of force it to be seen. So the very first color I ever made was an orange. And I have good oranges to this day. But that was the very first color I ever made. And it was an orange where it was like a Lamborghini orange that's always been a tri-stage. And the guy wanted it to be a base coat version. So I went back there and I just blended up something that worked. And he sprayed it and it looked amazing. And later on down the road, I saw that vehicle. Even whenever I had my kids, I went to a car show and I saw that vehicle that had been painted with that color.
Yeah.
Which was like kind of full circle and pretty cool. But
definitely.
So then from there, I would work summers, and I would come in during summers, and I would kind of be thrown to the wolves, and I would work the paint counter and answer the phone and bring up formulas, do pricing, stuff like that. I wasn't old enough to drive. I wasn't old enough to deliver, so I couldn't be a delivery driver at that point.
Right. And back then, if you were working the counter, they expected you to know something about paint and something.
And you had to be able to handle the customers, and you had to be able to handle their questions.
Yeah. And nowadays, if you go to a paint store, it's like walking into an AutoZone. The person behind the counter just works there.
Right.
If it's not in the computer, they probably don't know.
Right.
I'm not saying this is about every store. I'm just saying a lot of them.
Many of them.
Many of the stores I've been to over the past year or so have been like that.
Daily phone calls I've had for the last 15 years have been, I walk into a paint store, I ask a question, and they can't answer the most basic questions.
Right.
And that's been a frustration that a lot of people feel. And I'm pretty sure even everybody that makes the comments on Facebook that says go to your local store will have to admit that many times the people in those local stores are uninformed. They just don't know.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily their fault. They're hired in and they're not trained well and they don't know.
Right.
So, but for me, I think being thrown to the wolves forced me to learn.
Right. Absolutely.
It makes you have to understand how to answer those questions, and then obviously dealing with people on a regular basis, talking to them. You learn a lot from them. And I've been really good at being able to absorb information from people and then relay it in a way that is more layman to most people.
Yeah.
And that's something, fast forward to my Tamco days, I've been good with doing tech. I've been able to take tech information with me not doing something every single day and relay it to the masses for them to be able to understand it in a way that's not over their head.
So you talk to painters
all the time,
all day,
every day, 7 days a week.
So, I've heard people say, oh, well, she's not a painter, she doesn't know. Well, for one, you do know how to paint. You have painted.
And we can get to that part.
And you can paint. And let's be realistic, anybody can paint. Anybody with arms. The barrier to entry to be able to paint is pretty low.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there's people that can paint better than others.
Of course.
But the barrier to paint is pretty low. You just got to have arms and hands. And
you don't have to be certified. You don't have to pass a test.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
We love painters.
For sure.
But
you're not
to become a painter
doctor.
is not that hard.
No.
Let's be honest. Let's be real. But just by talking to painters all day, every day, you know a lot. Especially about their day to day, how things are for them.
Right.
The things that they need, the things that they need to know, and the chemistry for urethane really hasn't changed that much in the past 20 years. I mean, obviously some things have gotten better, some things have gotten worse, but for the most part, it's the same kind of issues. Um,
How many phone calls have you, since, being around me for every single day, how many phone calls have you been around where they're having an issue and I absolutely have been able to solve it?
Hundreds, if not thousands. And that's not even hyperbole. That's the honest truth.
And it's,
at least hundreds.
And it's things that sometimes are
and some
basic.
Of these people are experienced painters.
100% half the time they're very experienced.
But the thing is, like, a lot of times when you get experienced, especially, you kind of have your blinders on and you expect something to always act the same.
Right.
And then when something doesn't act the same, it throws you for a loop and you just don't know where you're at.
Right.
And so you just have to kind of back up. And sometimes it's a lot easier just to make a phone call or talk to a buddy, phone a friend, something like that. And, get a different point of view sometimes.
Right. I'm going to be honest.
You're
a lot
really
of
good at
times
that.
it's very basic.
Yeah.
A lot of times they'll have the phone call and they'll even be like, wow, why didn't I think of that? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like when you're in the moment and you're frustrated and something's not going the way you want, you overlook the basic. So that's something that I've been able to do. And, there's plenty of people that are probably able to do what I'm doing. And I'm not sitting here saying I'm the only one that can do it.
Right.
But whenever you aren't just limited to a very small amount of people that you're dealing with, like at your local paint store. Mm-hmm. I'm dealing with people around the entire country, into Canada, people that are constantly asking questions. So when you're being experienced with all different kinds of climates, mm-hmm. all different kinds of situations where they're in a booth, they're not in a booth, they're outside, they're inside, right. the temperature, the elevation, all of those things play into how paint works. Yep. Humidity is a huge factor. All of these things are a huge factor into why things work and why they don't work. And when you gather all of that experience over the course of 25 years, it becomes second nature. Yeah. So most people who are around me would kind of probably realize that it is very much second nature, that when you're explaining something to me, I basically can pick up with a few questions what's going on.
Yep. So getting back to the story.
So when I was in senior year, mm-hmm. you had to, I took marketing, and it's the only marketing I've ever had in my entire life. So a lot of people say you're a marketing genius. I didn't go to college. I've not, never went to college. I just graduated high school. But one of the classes that I took that I was very good in was my marketing class in high school. And that's the only experience I've ever had with marketing. And it really wasn't that much. You didn't learn that much. But part of what you had to do was you had to have a job. And so I already was having a job, but you had to have a job to have early work release. So I would go into school, and then every day by like 11, I would be released. Yeah. And then I had to have a job, and I had to go to that job. So my parents needed somebody to work in a body shop to control the thieves that were stealing stuff every day. Yeah. And anybody that works in body shops understands that this is an issue. Mm-hmm. So this body shop was a very large body shop called Beach Ford. It was a 50,000 square foot collision center, which in 1999, 2000 was very large. They didn't really have them then. Fully air conditioned, which again was very rare.
Yeah, it's rare.
And just a very, very nice shop. It had 3 spray booths, and then it had an entire body shop as well, and both were separated. And then it had this cage, and it had all of the materials that they would buy, and they bought a lot. They were buying $25,000 a week at that time, which is a lot.
Absolutely.
And they needed someone who was dedicated to mixing their paint. They had a guy, his name was Greg, and he wasn't going to do that anymore. So they needed someone to come in and mix their paint for all 3 painters every single day. You had to understand variances. You had to understand which one to pick for this car. You had to know which one, and you had chips. He had a lot of notes because it was all Fords, and he kind of knew like this always takes this variant. This always takes this variant. Single stage vehicles would come in. Actually, they were painted in base from the factory a lot of the times, but then they would only repair them in single stage. So you had to know which concept one that they were using. So there was a lot of different things that you had to know, and you had to mix a certain amount of paint every day. Yeah. Well, I would get that done fast, and it was pretty simple for me. So after I was done mixing all the paint for all 3 painters, one guy specifically, Anthony Ramirez, we're friends on Facebook still. He kind of took me under his wing, and he decided that he would teach me. So I learned from every stage of paint that there is. Yeah. I learned how to prep. They taught me how to strip a hood. I sat there with aircraft stripper back in the day, like the good stuff, the stuff that we still have today. And I stripped a hood and learned that whole process, did the plastic over top of it, had gloves, did all that. And then They taught me how to, do all the prepping for, with tape and everything like that and sanding. And then he was like, okay, well, you need to get in the booth. If you're going to learn all of this, you need to get in the booth. So then he taught me how to do that. So whenever these people say, well, you never painted a day in your life, you don't know. I was being taught at 16. Now, for sure, I do not paint every day. That's not my job. Right. It's not my career, and it's not supposed to be. That's not what I am.
It's not what you're supposed to do.
But to say that I've never had the experience, I've had the experience probably at a younger age than most people ever started, if we're being honest.
Right.
And my experience isn't just in paint. But then after he taught me that, they were like, okay, well, you would have the prep in the beginning. You would go to the paint booth, and then the back side of the paint booth would open, and then you would have who would do the cutting and buffing. So you would have to go to that part of it. And then they would be like, okay, well, now you need to learn how to cut and buff. So they taught me how to cut and buff using 3M. So that's why I understand the 3M system. It's the same system then as it is now. Yeah, it really hasn't changed that much.
It hasn't changed.
And, so all element of paint I was taught, and I did it for about a year. And then I got to a point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was removed from that and then put back into the paint store, which is where I excelled the best. I liked that environment, but then it just kind of grew old, I guess. I just was over it, and I wanted to go back to the paint store. And I asked my parents, I'm like, I'm kind of over this. Can I come back and just work in the paint store every day?
Yeah.
So after I graduated, that's what I did. I worked in the paint store every day. There was a period of time when I was in high school that I was thinking of going to college, and it was something that I was entertaining. I was actually offered some scholarships, and it's a different ones to go to, and thought about it. And then before I was going to graduate, I was offered a position to be an estimator and to be trained as an estimator at a young age to be able to do that. And that was something that I was going to do. Back step a little bit, my mom was actually a CCC person that sold it. She sold CCC for a couple years. She made President's Club, was very good at it. So estimating was something that I actually was taught sooner than I was actually taught even how to paint.
Right.
So I was taught how to use a CCC estimating system at a young age. So I understood and had a grasp of that. And that's why this person was like, I think you'd be a good estimator. You understand body shops, you'd be good at it. So that was kind of what I was supposed to do. And then it just never really panned out. And I just kind of it just wasn't really what I wanted to do either. Like, it sounded cool, but it just didn't really want to be an estimator.
Yeah, there's no art to it, really.
There's no creativity to it. There's nothing. To me, it was just going to be like a boring kind of a job. It just didn't really interest me. So that didn't pan out, and I didn't end up doing that. And then I got put back into the paint store. And then that's kind of where every day I would deal with people. I would answer the phones. I love dealing with the walk-ins. Mm-hmm. I'm a person, if you know me, if you really know me, I don't like people.
Yeah. You're not a people person unless they have like a common interest.
Correct.
And then you're very much very personable.
Yeah. So if and it's funny too, because one time somebody that knew me was watching me, and they were like, "You're really good with this person. You're answering all of his questions, and you're being very helpful." And they're like, "But you're not like this." And I'm like, "You're right." But if it's about paint, I am like that, and I actually like it, and I feel comfortable.
Right.
When I'm not talking about something that I'm very familiar with, it makes me feel very uncomfortable, and I feel very awkward. And I have not lost that. I still have that to this day, and I don't like being put into situations that make me feel awkward.
It always cracks me up when we're somewhere and some stranger tries to talk to you about
anything,
some random thing, and how you kind of handle it.
And you can always tell.
You're nice, but you can definitely tell like your whole persona just like you just like, ew.
Yeah, like, leave me alone, please.
Don't touch me.
Leave me alone. Just go away. Yeah. So it's funny too, because a lot of people see me online and they're like, "Oh, you just seem like this really I don't even know what the word would be. Just you seem like you're really like out there and open and like
extroverted and bubbly."
Yeah, I'm not.
That's not us at all.
So, anyways, that kind of encompasses, where and when I was in the paint store, so that's where I get to. So then I become a delivery driver.
Right.
I'm old enough to where I can drive. You had to be a certain age. I think you had to be 17, I think you had to be 18 to be a delivery driver. So at 18, I was a delivery driver, and then I would be in body shops every day, constantly in every single kind of body shop, whether it was a small body shop or a really large body shop, and I would go in there and deliver their products. And we had, small customers, and we had customers like Beach Ford that would buy $25,000, $30,000 at a time, and they'd fill up the entire van, and you'd have to unload the entire van and check it all in and do all that stuff. So I was in body shops even after I wasn't painting or doing any of the mixing or any of that stuff, but I was in one every single day, 3 times a day, because we had, morning, afternoon, and a late afternoon delivery. And a lot of paint stores have completely gone away from that, and they only do them like twice a week now. But back then, you did 3 deliveries every single day, 5 days a week. And you had a huge area.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go between, in this area, it was called Hampton Roads, and you'd go between like 7 different cities, and that's you'd deliver all over that. So then my parents sold that. They put together a deal that facilitated it being bought out. And that's kind of like where Tamco started, right? At that point is where Tamco started. So I always tell people Tamco started right when I graduated high school, which was in 2001. And about 2001 to 2002 is when Tamco kind of became full-fledged. And during that time frame, my dad was doing some different products, and he was doing reducers, and he was doing different things like that. And he was starting with clears and starting with, primers and stuff like that, and binders and doing all of that. But it was not to what people know today. It wasn't even close to that.
Right. Well, you got to start somewhere.
Right.
So he started off with reducers and clears and primers, and then built it from that.
So then he bought out another guy in Ohio and bought that company, took it over. That company was well known for doing hardeners and different things for some of the major companies.
Mm-hmm.
And then he helped teach and show us all about manufacturing, because we did not understand manufacturing. That wasn't our forte.
Right.
And he kind of, worked with Sean every day and worked with my dad and did a lot of different things where all of that was taught. And he did this for a couple years where he stayed there, and he stayed with us sometimes, and he did all of this. And we were full-fledged manufacturing. We did not sell to the public like Tamco does now. When I was there, like they currently do, it was basically we sold to other jobber stores.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sold in either the Tamco label, which was not the most common. And it's only OG people remember, like the old school red label. That is what the label was. But primarily, we did a lot of private label. And a lot of times people were using Tamco when they had no idea that they were using it.
Right.
And it would be funny, too, because sometimes you would get comments where you would see people kind of, and this was before online, so people were not saying it online, but you would have like phone conversation or different things, and they'd make a comment. And you can't say anything because that's how private label works. But it's just funny how a lot of times people will trash something and they're using it and they have no idea. And that's just kind of a funny thing throughout paint entirely. But
yeah.
So then fast forward to that, the economy is doing terrible. At one point in this entire scenario, I become the owner of Tamco. My parents wanted to kind of do something a little bit different, and I owned it under Tamsters LLC, which is, I use the name Tamster as all of my handles and stuff like that. It's a nickname that my dad gave me from an SNL skit when I was like 3.
So what's your name is on my phone, on my cell phone?
It's what a lot of people call me. My parents have called me that forever. But that was like, what I ran under, and I ran under like Tamco Paint Manufacturing, and then, or Tamco Industries, I think at that time is what I was running under. And the economy in 2008 was really bad. Yeah. And the whole like Obama economy was terrible.
The housing crisis, all that stuff.
All of that happened. It all crashed at one time. And as a small business, it was really, really hard.
Absolutely.
And we struggled through. And that wasn't the first time that it got bad. And then we got to a point where I had told my parents that I don't feel like I'm good at this. I don't want to do this. And I'm still very young at this point. I graduated in 2001. So in 2008, I'm not that old.
Yeah, you're still in your early 20s.
And it was hard. And I basically decided that my mom had made a comment to me that it was a very negative comment. And it was basically like, maybe you should just go work for someone else. And it was in like 2013 when I think that was said. And it hit me really hard. That was said. It was kind of like, maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe we should just get out of this, and you should just go get a job somewhere else. And
we've all had that feeling though.
Yeah. And I understand it, but it also changed something in me. So in that time frame of things being really bad, I had a house. and I lost my house and I had to go into foreclosure on it, and I went through bankruptcy, and I had no choice. Just with how everything was, there was no other way. And I don't think I've told that to anybody other than a few people, but that's what the case was. And I feel like the only reason I'm telling it now is people always say to me, what is it that drives you? And that is it. That whole thing happening, me moving when I was 9 months pregnant with William, is literally what changed me. And William's 10, so realize that this was 10 years ago. And a lot has happened in 10 years.
Yeah.
So a
lot.
lot.
What's happened in 2 years?
So in 2013 and to 2014, I decided that I would use social media, that I didn't want to be the person who owned it. I didn't want to be the person in charge of doing any of that stuff, dealing with any of the vendors, paying all the bills. I didn't want to do any of that. All I wanted to focus on was what I felt I was good at, and that was sales.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out how to do sales. We were selling on eBay. That was my dad's idea. It was a good idea. We were doing all of that stuff prior.
Yeah, this is still pretty early in e-commerce.
Yeah. So like we had a Yahoo store. No one really had Yahoo stores. We had, we were selling online. I still know the very first customer I ever had on that website. He lives in Texas. I've met him since now with Revolt. I never met him until then.
Right.
But he was the very first customer.
That's awesome.
For Tamco. And he placed more orders than anybody in that time frame. And this is over 10 years now. And we were doing well, and we decided that we probably should not do as much with jobbers, that was not making us money, and that we needed to just focus on retail. That retail was where we needed to do it. And the only way to truly do that, we had a paint store this entire time, and I was working in a paint store, and I had customers that would come in, and we were selling various different lines. Even while we were manufacturing, we did not manufacture color.
Right.
So we had De Beer, and I was one of the very first people in the country to have De Beer, and we were selling Valspar. And then we got rid of that. And then we were one of the very first people to have Metalux, and we had Metalux, and we were selling that. And Metalux was a very good system, but we were selling all of these systems with Tamco's manufacturing of products. But again, no colors, just binders, clears, reducers, primers, cleaners, things like that.
Right.
So fast forward when I'm like, we need to use social media. To me, social media is going to be the only way to try to get the brand out there to retail more. So I created an Instagram, and I did not create an Instagram for myself personally. I only created it for the business. And then I created a Facebook group, and that was created in 2014 for Tamco. And that was the original Tamco 411 group that I had created. And I worked every day to get people into that. And then I created the Tamco like page, and I did the Instagram page, and I had a guy who helped me. He was a tremendous help with helping me grow the Instagram page. He would have access, and he would go and he would like a bunch of people's comments or posts, and he would go comment. And that was just kind of putting the brand out there. Then I had the idea that if we just started giving a bunch of product out and having people test it, that once they used it, they would see that the product was different than everyone else's product.
Yeah, that drug dealer mentality.
So that was my whole thing. Like, just
give them
a taste. Just give them a taste, and then they would come back. Just
absolutely.
So that was my idea. And I remember there was this time frame on social media where everybody was posting a red labeled quart can with 2104 clear and the hardener. And it became this thing where everybody was like, hey, can I get a sample? And in the industry, samples never worked. You would give a sample to a person, it would sit on the shelf. They would never use it. It's still to this day, a lot of times you'll be given a sample from your paint guy, and you're like, it's not what I use every day. I don't want to chance it. I'm not going to use it. And you just put it on the shelf.
Right. And also, too, like a lot of times samples are kind of small. So you're just waiting on like the right small thing to come in or to paint something for yourself. And as a painter, you don't get to paint for yourself most of the time.
Right. So this, though, it was kind of like this fad. And everybody kind of wanted to use it. And realize this is prior to any of the paint companies that are out there right now. There is not the paint companies at this time frame doing things on social media. There's not Tropical Glitz. There's not Paint Huffer doing this. They're not in paint. They're not doing any of this. We were the only ones. And when I say that, we were the only ones, the model that you see now, it was a model that Tamco did. There was no one doing this.
Right.
Utilizing social media, there was a period of time where back in the day, it was Tamco was being tagged with Tropical. They were being tagged with, Paint Huffer. They were being tagged with House of Color. And we were being used with all of those products. I would post their stories to my stories. And it was kind of just like this reciprocal thing. I remember there was a period of time where in all of this that I watched a transition of people stop using House of Color in favor of using Tamco. And
Right.
that to me was huge. That was one of the hugest things I had ever witnessed, was watching people say, I'd rather use this than this. And they would slowly stop using those materials and slowly start going to Tamco.
Yeah. So after you got them hooked on using the clear and stuff like that, when did the color come along?
So color didn't come along until the end of 2018, or actually the end of 2017. So me and my parents were having a conversation, and I was telling them that we cannot grow to the level that we want to be if we don't have color.
Right.
You're still forcing everyone to have to buy from somebody else. The only thing you're offering them is the unders and the overs. And that does not, a lot of people are okay with that. And to this day, most people still kind of do that.
Yeah.
But
there's still a lot of people that like a complete system.
Correct. And you're never going to be that next level. And in my mind, in the back of my mind, I always had that Matrix thought. Like Matrix was nothing and then they became huge.
Right.
And that's kind of was my thought for a long time with Tamco. The only way you're going to get there is with color. So my parents were like, okay, we agree with you. And, then we started doing color.
Right.
And it was a huge thing and a huge undertaking and finding what would work and doing all of that. And my dad is the one that did all of that and facilitated all of that. But the way that we were doing color, we didn't have formulas. And it was very difficult. And every single day that someone would order a color with no formula, Sean would have to create it from scratch. He'd have to match it to chips, and he'd have to sit there and actually formulate it, put it into a system, and it was time consuming.
Yeah. And nobody knows or understands what that's like. When you have all the toners, but you don't have anything else.
You don't have any starting point. You don't know what to use. You have to just know.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Right.
It's a huge undertaking to create those formulas.
Right. And it's something that you have to have an understanding of all of the toners.
Right.
You have to understand that there's yellow shade and there's red shade and there's blue shade and there's green shade. And you have to understand that there is a variation of different blues and different reds and different greens. And if you don't know that and you try to mix them together, they don't work.
Right.
So that's something that Sean has become very good at doing and learning that over the course of time. He's been the person who's been able to do that. In an aspect, by the way, that I don't even have. He's much better at that than I am. I'm good at taking something from nothing and creating something more than I am at being like, here, take this and match this. Now, I can match things off pictures, and I love doing that. But I don't like matching something in front of me. I hate it. It bores me.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it.
I agree. I'd much rather make a color from scratch.
And he's meticulous, and he's good at doing that, so that's why he is the person that does that. But what I did when I was there was realize, okay, well, I have this entire system that we have all this stuff that we've made, but I don't have any formulas for it. And what are we going to do? And then I told my dad, and I was like, I remember being in the living room and being like, the only way this is going to work is if we create a custom line. And if we create a custom line, it doesn't matter if you have formulas, because you have all of these colors that you can just make, and you can just name them, and you can just sell them, and you're
making your own formula.
Correct.
Your own color, your own formula.
Right. So, backtrack to when I said I was looking through the House of Color book when I was 13, I was this many more years past that and realizing that I don't like those colors anymore. What I thought was really cool then in my, late 20s, early 30s, now I'm in my early 30s, it's not cool to me anymore. And I realized that I could do a much better job. So I decided to sit there and figure out the system. And you can't just, if people think that you just go and you just throw things together and it works, it doesn't. You have to understand the strengths. You have to understand how they mix in together. You have to know how much of this to add with this much pearl to add for that pearl effect to show through and not drown out the color, not drown out the effect. And it's it's a balance.
Right.
And if you don't have the balance, it doesn't work.
Yeah, you can get muddy really quick, and you can waste a lot of product.
Right.
And this, it's expensive.
So one thing that people always say to me is, you do a really good job at making really vivid, clean colors. And that's the word I always use. They're clean.
Yeah.
And that's because I keep them simple And I feel like when they're more simple, they stay cleaner because you're not adding in a bunch of stuff that muddies them up.
Absolutely.
So a lot of my colors, probably the most popular colors are the most simplistic colors, but it's just the right balance and having that right balance. So the very first color I ever made was a green, and I named that Dragon Green. And then it was drag, Drag, and then N green. And then the
mini trucking reference.
yeah, and then the second color I ever made was that pink that I ended up naming You Can't Sit With Us. And those were probably still to this day, even with Tamco selling them, I'm sure they're still their two most popular colors almost. They were just very vivid, very clean, covered well. So that was my thing too. Like everyone else was used to having coverage in 5 or 6 coats. And I was like, why? Like you don't have to. These colors cover in 2,
right,
3 max.
Yeah, when you're using stronger toners and things like that.
Or when you're in
they'll
control.
Definitely cover.
Right. So you have to realize that like paint companies, you know, they want to make more money, so they tend to water things down. And I was like,
reducer is cheaper,
or binder is cheaper.
Yeah, and binder is cheaper.
Right, intercoat binder is cheaper.
If you can add those things
to weaken it,
you know, it's just like
right,
you know, cutting it, right, cutting it down. More drug dealer mentality.
So I didn't do that. I did not formulate with binders. I had fully strong pigmented colors that covered extremely well, and that was the one thing that everybody would say. The two things were, wow, these colors are really vivid, and wow, they really cover. And that's what I became known for. So I continuously just went through and would be like, okay, well, I need this really good blue, and I need this really good red. Rocket Red, which I've used now through my 3rd company, was my like most popular red I've ever made.
Yeah.
And still, you know, Tamco still sells it, and it's a very, very nice color, and it still covers really well. And then it's just been the red that I've always felt like I needed to have. You have to have this really clean, bright red, full of pearl that covers, that's not a tri-stage.
Right.
And that's hard to achieve because most really cool reds are tri-stages. And I didn't want
it's hard to achieve that effect without doing a tri-stage.
Right. So my whole mentality has been no tri-stages when not needed, and trying to make everything a base to make it more simple for the end user. A lot of who I sell to is not, well, a lot of who I was selling to was not necessarily as experienced. You know, having to walk around a car double the amount of time is more money.
Yeah, it sucks.
It's more product. And my thought process was, I'm here to save you money and time.
Absolutely.
So,
so let's get back to the story. So now you've got Tamco selling color. You've created a color line. You've got your own, you know, reducers and clears and all that stuff too.
So 2017, I decide Caleb is my. He was born in 2016. So 2017, I decide I have to do SEMA. If I don't do SEMA now, when we're on this brink, because we were like at the brink of like being really good.
Right.
So from 2014 to 2015, we had a lot of growth with social media. We were doing a lot of goalie masks. We were known for that. We had the clear coat that they were using in the NHL, and they were using it in the smaller levels because the high impact clear and then the 9500 clear was amazing for these helmets, and it was working really well, and we were getting a lot of attention for that. And then 2016, we were just continually growing, and the website was doing really well, and social media was doing really well, and the group had grown tremendously, and there was a lot of people in it. And then 2017, Caleb was like 11 months old, and I was like, we have to do SEMA. There's no way, because they had this thing where if you wanted to be in the main hall with everybody, you had to first go into the like new section of SEMA, which meant you weren't going to really be seen. And then you had to basically work your way into the main hall. And they had said at that time, that was like 5 years. And I'm like, well, if we had to wait 5 years at this point and we don't start, we're never going to be where we want to be as fast as we're growing.
Right.
So I did not have the support of my family, to be honest. I didn't tell them. And that's something that I was kind of bad about. I had a vision and I had a plan, and I kind of didn't want to hear what anyone had to say.
Yeah.
Because I had this vision and I had this plan and it was working.
Better to ask forgiveness than permission, kind of thing.
And that's what I did. And I paid for it all myself. I paid for going there. I paid for my travel. I paid for all of it on my own.
Which even back then, SEMA was not cheap.
No. And I didn't have a lot of money. And the money that I had, I used for that because I really believed that if this was done, this was going to be my future. This was going to be my kids' future.
Absolutely.
And I 100% fully believed that this was the only way for this to work. I ended up telling my parents, and they weren't happy about it because they've never really been a fan of it. But my dad's good about, if you make a decision and you're going to do it, follow through. So, they watched Caleb for me, and we went and we did SEMA, and I had a lot of help. A guy named Rick Premu helped me. He helped me kind of know the ins and outs. He's a really, old school airbrusher, and, told me everything I needed to know, helped me get everything I needed to know, helped me meet certain people that I still know to this day. And he was a huge help, just making me feel comfortable doing it. The things you needed to know. And all we had was a 10 by 10. We had a vinyl backdrop that we printed. We had a bunch of people bring us artwork that was just kind of there. We had some live airbrushing going on at the booth. And it was real small, but it made a huge impact.
Right.
And we had a lot of attention, and it was kind of the thing that from that moment on 100% catapulted Tamco in a completely different direction.
I've always said doing things like that, people start taking you seriously.
Right.
Because they know that you're in it. You're in it for real.
And it gave credibility, and 100% there is no question in my mind that it gave credibility.
Absolutely.
So then 2018, my family's on board. We do SEMA again. And in that entire time frame, we're having tremendous growth. People always tell me that they have never been able to attribute any sales from SEMA. I hear this all the time. I've talked to other paint companies. They can't attribute sales. I can. Yeah. I know the growth. I've talked to the people that said specifically, I only bought from you because I met you at SEMA.
Right.
I tracked that growth. And I know that the growth that was achieved was more than triple what I spent to do that. So I already knew that day one that the money was being made back.
Yeah, it's worth it.
So then by 2018, we're in the Westgate Hall, where there's like other companies around at the time. I think in 2018 we were like right next to Capshi, which was like coming up and coming at that time frame. Egyptian company that some people are using now as their paint under a different label. But then that got us a lot of attention. We had a lot of people that saw us there, and it put us in front of a different crowd. I picked up a bunch of different body shops that it was not really who I was selling to at the time. They were buying, because they saw us there, they were like talking to different people. In 2018, I also had a couple different painters who offered to come and just kind of help and talk.
Yeah. And
kind of give their experience to people that would come to the booth, because I thought that was better than just me doing it, because they do it every day. And then in 2018, with the custom color line, we had all of our colors. We're showing all of that stuff. I had a thing where everybody painted like an F-style gallon clear can. And everybody had their own unique one that they did. And they were really cool. And that was like the full display of everything that was custom painted, was just all custom paint cans. And we did a 10 by 20 that year. And that had really good growth. And then 2018, we continued to have really good growth. I was being begged consistently and constantly for candies. And I kept saying, I don't want to do candies. If I can't do candies different or better than what's already on the market, I have zero idea. And that was the same wording and the same phrase I kept using. If I can't be better, I can't do them better, then I have no interest. And to be honest, I had zero experience. I didn't know how to make them. I didn't know what they were. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew that we had to have it.
Yep.
So 2019 comes around, and we do SEMA 2019. And I'm trying to figure out how to do candies. And again, all the manufacturers that I was buying from would not help. The manufacturers I was buying, and we were buying from BSF, we were buying from a lot of different places, and they just were not help. They were not helpful whatsoever. And you have to understand that the dyes and the powders, they become dyes when you create them into the liquid form with solvents and resins and stuff like that. A lot of them are not used in automotive. They're used in all other aspects of everything, in all kinds of industry. And they're not really used in automotive. So even whenever you would say the word candy to them, candy paint, they had no idea what you were talking about. They did not know what it meant. And so that was just something that it was hard for me. When you don't have someone to kind of guide you, and I didn't have anyone to guide me. I didn't have anyone to help me. So Pat Dry comes in. He was helping a lot of the time with Tamco. He was doing tech. He came up from Florida, and every day for a week, we worked on trying to create something that would work. I finally figured out what I needed. I got all the powders. I got all the colors. And there's a bunch of different colors that are in the system that just don't work for what you're looking for, because you have the main color of candies that you're trying to make. So they'll give you like 4 reds, but you only want like one of those reds.
Right.
And then they'll give you like something that's supposed to be like a brandy wine, but you had to kind of like, there's just different things that you had to know to create. So Pat was like, I really think one of the best concentrates I've ever used. And he's like, and I don't think it's House of Color, to be honest with you. He's like, I personally think it's Exalta's. He's like, I think the Hot Hues concentrate is amazing. He's like, it's black. You can't see any color, and it's got a good consistency. It's like a thicker viscosity. Yeah. It's not super thin.
It's like that good balsamic vinegar.
It's like, exactly. Mm-hmm. That's the best way to word it. And it was just a different kind of concentrate. And it was really expensive. You could only buy it in like pints. It's like $160, $170 a pint for the stuff, but it's super concentrated. And he goes, I kind of think that this is what you should aim for. You should try to make yours like this. So we did. We sat there and we were looking at the Hot Hues concentrates, and I saw the consistency, and we, found a resin that would work really well on them. And then my thought was like, okay, well, for them to be better, what makes them better? What is the one thing that happens to candies? And that's, well, they fade. So my thought was, okay, well, I'm not sure how much UV is going to make them last longer, because eventually they will fade no matter whose they are, no matter whose clear you're using. But it couldn't hurt. So we made ours better by adding UV to them. And UV was added into every single one of them. And they were tested. And we had an accelerated UV testing machine, and they were tested, and they lasted. And it can only be expected to last for a certain period of time, but they lasted longer than any of the competitions did. And so when we made them, they were made really strong, because we were trying to mimic a very strong, thicker viscosity candy. And we added the UV in, and then I was like, okay, we have what we need for SEMA. So 2019 SEMA, the entire idea was candy. So I had the backdrop was completely made. Mark, who was there, helped design the entire backdrop. And then I took the candy dyes that were created, and then I used them as a wood stain. And that was my idea, to kind of like oversaturate them with reducer and rub them in like you would rub wood when you're doing like wood staining and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I used them to do it that way. And then I'd put like one color. I was like, okay, well, that's too red. And then I'd come back with what would be like the lemonade that Tamco has, and I would put that over top of it, and then it would achieve a better color. And then I'd come back with limeade, which was a greener version, and I would just kind of keep building it in layers until it created like the look of wood. So the entire backdrop for Tamco's 2019 SEMA display was wood, and then it was metal, and all the wood was 100% candy. So then I had, because the theme was candies, and we were releasing candies at SEMA, we had tons of candy all over SEMA. We had like Hershey Kisses with the Tamco logo on them, and we had just all kinds of, we had these really big lollipops that had the Tamco logo on them. And so 2019 was the last SEMA that I had done, and it was the last SEMA that Tamco had done, because following year COVID would happen. And but that particular SEMA was huge for us. People from House of Color stopped by. Mike Taylor stopped by. And congratulated and said, you've done a remarkable job at what you're doing. And that meant a lot to me, that, he was in a House of Color shirt, and he would walk over and he would be, you're doing a really good job. And Tamco at that point, in my opinion, had commanded a lot of respect. It was definitely something that was a force at that point. A lot of people were using it. A lot of known people were using it. There was actually a lot of people who were using it that wouldn't tell you that they were using it, because they didn't want to piss off their other paint sponsors.
Right.
But so many people were using it. Even Jesse James Carr, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but Jesse James Carr, that was in the SEMA booth, the Mercury that he had, that was 2104 clear. It was 100% 2104 clear from Tamco.
Yeah.
I know
there's multiple Mercuries that he's owned.
But the blue one.
But the blue one, yeah.
So just different times where people just couldn't say, they didn't want to say, but they didn't like the way that something was performing. So they would quietly use it because this particular product was performing better. Which,
and the reality of it is, that's really common. Even you and I have discussed this with cars we've seen at SEMA. Mm-hmm. They're in, one paint company's booth, but we know that it has
completely different product on
a totally different product.
Right.
It might have some of their product, but it doesn't have all of their product.
No.
Unlike our booth,
No, and that honestly was a thing that I refused. And so this even came up. So when I was making the candies, I wanted to have a bike in that booth that used the candies.
Right.
And the comment was made to me that, well, if this isn't going to work, then we'll just use a different concentrate from somebody else and we'll just still put it in the booth. And I was like, no, I refuse. And I was like, I would rather have nothing painted in that booth than to use someone else's concentrates and advertise it as my own, because
Absolutely.
it's just being a complete fraud.
Yep.
So I wouldn't do it. And even when we did the Revolt booth, like if it did not contain Revolt or Custom Creative, we didn't want it there.
Yep.
Because it's just like, why? Like we have so many people offering us stuff. We don't need something that's not ours. And that was entirely like, you had to entirely give us start to finish Revolt and or Custom Creative to be in the booth.
Yep. That was the rules for us. And
that was what I wanted even in the Tamco booth. I didn't want to mix.
Killed it.
Yeah.
We did a great
100%,
job.
100%.
All right. So
Best
you got
booth.
the candies. You did the last SEMA booth with Tamco.
So then COVID happens, and I get the announcement that COVID happens, and I'm in the paint room mixing a bunch of colors, and they're like, okay, well, SEMA's canceled, and this happened in August, and they were like, it's canceled because, COVID's just closing it down, can't do it. Vegas is shutting down. No one thought Vegas was going to shut down. So everybody kept telling me, SEMA's going to happen. Vegas is never going to shut down. Like out of any city, Vegas won't shut down.
It's a big deal when
right. So then
Sin
Vegas
City shuts down,
and they start making everyone wear masks, and we realize there isn't going to be a SEMA. So literally, and I tell this to people, and they think I'm probably full of shit, but literally 30 seconds into hearing that, I'm like, I need to do something. And I was like, the name Takeover wasn't like the first thing in my head, but it was, I need to do a SEMA. I need to have a SEMA happen in Virginia in that time frame.
Of all places.
All of these, I'm living in Virginia, all of these, and I can't travel, right? So I can't travel, so I have to do it in Virginia. And I'm like, all of these people pre-plan to take time off for SEMA. That's their vacation in a lot of places. That's what they do for vacation. A lot of them go as a family or they go independently. So I'm like, okay, well, it's August. SEMA's in November. They already have this time off. They have a week off, typically. Let's do something. So I get on the phone and I call 5 people, and all 5 people are like, fuck yeah, like this is the greatest thing ever. Like, let's do this.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, like let's go. And so then I tell my parents, and I'm like, this is my idea. I think this is going to be a huge thing. We have a SEMA budget. We're not going to use that SEMA budget now. Let's do this paint class. Let's do a thing where we teach people how to paint, and we teach them only using Tamco, all of our products in that time frame. And there's so much stuff that I'm leaving out because it's just, you can't talk about it. But in that time frame, I created the Intensity airbrush line in literally 10 minutes, like 100% created an entire airbrush line in 10 minutes. Then decided that we needed to do a pinstriping paint, created the pinstriping paint out of the same system I used to create Intensity out of. And then was like, okay, well, we have airbrush paint, we have pinstriping paint, we have candies. We can do a full-fledged paint class. They weren't doing those paint classes like this. No one had done a paint class on this scale where literally tons of instructors were offered to come. We had, I think at that time we had 120 people that came to the first one. One of the guys was like, hey, let's paint a mini truck while we're doing it. Let's do that as my part of it. I don't want to teach. Let's paint a mini truck. And then it was, okay, well, who are we going to get a mini truck from? And then Steve Nielsen was like, well, what if we get, no, actually I said, because someone had said that Mike Finnegan had taken Alex Hu's white mini truck, and maybe that would be the perfect person because Roadkill was super popular and he was really popular at the time.
Right.
So Steve was like, oh, I know him. Like, I can ask. So then he facilitates the entire thing to where Mike Finnegan's like, hell yeah, like, you can paint my truck for free. So we get his truck and we bring it, and, they paint that truck during the entire takeover event. We had all these instructors come in, we had all these people come in, and we had food trucks come in, and we had margaritas the entire time, and the whole thing was a blast. It was like a party, and everybody was so willing to do it because they couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't travel. Travel restrictions were being eased up on during that time frame. They were getting a little bit more lax, but a lot of people didn't fly. A lot of people drove because it's kind of the only thing you could do. I had people come from the entire country. We had people from California, Texas, everywhere
Yeah.
come to this event.
Yeah. I remember seeing the pictures and videos and everything. I wanted to go. I didn't get to go,
Yeah.
but it was huge.
Yeah. And my mom's idea was to use Langley, and Langley Speedway is somewhere that I kind of grew up as, since I was 14. We would go to the racetrack all the time. So my parents had really good connections with the people at Langley Speedway. So they had a meeting where me and them went there and we talked about it. And we're like, hey, we want to do this. It has to be during this time frame. There is no racing during that time frame. Can we rent the track? And they said, oh yeah, like let's do. You can use the inner field. You can make sure you distance, make sure you kind of do whatever you can do. But the cool thing about it was you're in a racetrack, away from the public.
Yeah.
No one can really see everything that's going on. Like everybody that was there did not agree with COVID. They thought it was bullshit. They were partying. They weren't distancing, but we just kind of like had to say like, stay 5 feet away.
Yeah.
Don't shake hands. But it was awesome because we had people who had never painted ever. And we had Brandon and Adam Lucier, Brandon Gooch, and then Adam Lucier teaching the very first class for the very beginner graphics. And they took people who had never painted, never airbrushed, never done anything, never laid tape, never done candies, never done anything. And in that time frame, they painted 2 skateboards each. And when you looked at them, you would never know.
Right.
You would never have known they had never painted.
Yeah, they look like
amazing. And then we had pinstriping, and we had gold leafing, and we had, Sick doing a class, and we had him doing it with Jose, and we just had a bunch of different people. And then in that background, we had a huge blow-up booth and compressors, and they were working on this mini truck the entire time, and we were filming that, and it was huge. So then when I'm there, we're like, we got to do this again. Like, when are we doing this again? So we have a conversation during that event, and we're like talking to the people at the track. We're like, racing starts end of March, typically beginning of April. When is this going to work? Like, when can we do this? They're like, okay, well, we can't do it that period of time. They're like, but nothing's really going on that week in May. So they're like, May would work. Does May work for you? And I was like, hell yeah, like we'll make it work. So in November, we announced that Takeover 2 would happen the very first week of May.
right.
And then that's the one that you had gone to. We had invited you, and you were one of the pinstriping instructors, and it was the same thing. It was super cool. And in that time frame, all of the instructors kind of grew these bonds and these relationships, and you had done the same thing. And it's just kind of been like a really cool thing to see. This is almost like 5 years later now, seeing how all these people still talk.
Yeah.
And they still get along.
Like I said, I've said this multiple times. A lot of my friends that I'm still really close with, I met there. And getting to work with some, with some legends, Danny Riddle and Michael Hall. Danny recently passed away.
Right.
So getting to hang out with him and getting to learn from him, as well as teach beside him, was awesome.
Right.
Same with Michael Hall. It was just an amazing experience for me. It really it changed a lot of things for me. Like, I'm definitely glad that I went.
And I feel like for a lot of people, there was a lot of people I would have conversations with, different artists that were there, and they kind of were like in a rut. And I think COVID had a lot to do with that too. It just put people in a very depressive state.
And that's where I was at. I was definitely in a very depressive state. I had a lot going on. I was definitely in a rut. And just being around like-minded people, and
that's
almost everybody was happy.
Yeah, and I think that's
my
what
first
a lot
couple
of it.
days there, I was like really just trying to,
it's overwhelming.
figure out where I fit into all this.
Yeah.
But as soon as I kind of got in there, it was a blast. Everybody was super friendly. Everybody wanted to take me out to dinner and hang out, and
everybody's very welcoming.
Awesome. Yeah,
everybody's very welcoming.
Yeah.
And then anytime anybody new has been brought in, people have been very welcoming. I know even now with Paint Cult, this is gonna be our second one that we're doing. Zach has never really taught, and people are being like, well, let me give him some pointers. Let me just help guide him, and people have offered to have them talk to him just to kind of make him feel more comfortable.
Right.
And that's just kind of how everybody is. It's like it becomes like a family, and they are really cool with each other and
Definitely.
really helpful. And then I think that whole being around not just other artists, but then like all of the people that come, they are into this, but they don't really know anybody that's into it. They don't have family or friends that are really into it, but they like it. So it allows them to be around a bunch of like-minded people too. And then it also gives the people who are taking the classes a chance to kind of be around and hang out with and ask questions and talk to the people that they look up to online.
Definitely.
You know, a lot of times people say, you know, like I met such and such then and it made a huge impact and it's tremendously increased my work because I got to mentor under them or they got to help me. And so it's been from afar, just kind of like looking in, it's been a really cool thing to see what started at Tamco and then how we've been able to now do this again and do it more along what is truly like our style too. I always kind of felt like I always felt like the takeover event, the first one was my favorite. And then it's kind of like you can't achieve what you achieved, if that makes sense. You're always chasing that. And to me, the second takeover had a completely different feel. It got too big.
The second one was huge.
It got way too big. It lost that feel. We had people stealing, which you never would have thought would ever have happened. It would not have happened at the first one. It just wasn't that same crowd. It wasn't that same feel. There was people that did not belong there. Just weird.
Okay, so what happens next?
So a few months later, I quit Tamco.
What? No way.
Some people haven't heard.
Yeah, I know. I hear every day.
Every
what?
day.
You're not at Tamco anymore? I talked to you yesterday. I talked to Tammy at Tamco yesterday, and she didn't quit.
So my mom's name is Tammy.
Yeah.
So they may confuse that. But it's funny, too, because there's people on my friends list that you would think they would have seen the memo, but they
you would think
still get confused. So
especially it being a company that got famous through social media.
I would think out of all of this time, you would have known by now. But anyways, so I'm not going to touch much on that. I've touched on it a little bit before, but there was issues and I was feeling very much like I did not belong or fit there anymore.
Well, let's just say it's tough to work with family.
And I was going to say that.
You know, I've done that. I worked for my dad on and off for a couple of years. I know it's not easy. And I've hired family members also to come and work for me.
Right.
And it's very difficult.
It's hard. And every single person that I've ever said, you know, it's hard working with family. Every one of them is like, you don't have to tell me. I know how hard it is. And
absolutely.
So that's that. And, you know, have I thought about that decision a lot? Yeah. Have I regretted it? You know, different times I have.
We've discussed it a lot.
And, but I think a lot of times those regrets are just fear and then wanting to go back or thinking of going back or attempting or, you know, my parents wouldn't even know that, but just of what is normal or what you feel is normal.
Yeah.
But I've grown up a lot since then, to be honest. I feel like, you know, I'm going to be 42, but in a sense, I've still matured a lot in that time frame and been forced to grow up in a way that I had not experienced. And I see things different and in that form of maturity that I feel like I have now, and a more clear mind of like reflecting. I feel like I was supposed to leave.
Yeah.
I don't think that is where I was intended to be the entire time. I feel like I outgrew my role there. And I feel, you know, that the path that I took was not the path that I should have taken per se. But it got me to where I am now, and it got me to to what Revolt is now. And that to me is the most important thing out of the entire situation, out of everything that I've learned. You know, the decisions I made after I quit Tamco, I do believe looking back were very rushed. I believe the relationship I got into with the company that I left, I was rushed into out of just needing to have something, needing to do something. And I feel like the entire thing was rushed. And, you know, sometimes you work with people and it's not meant to be.
Right.
And it's just not a good fit and it's just not what you're supposed to do. And, you know, I don't regret it. I learned from it. But to some point, there is the regret that when I quit, I should have just had the belief in myself that I could have done this at that point.
Yeah,
I could have decided at that moment I wanted to create something and not have gone and worked for someone else. I'm not meant to work for someone else.
You absolutely are not meant to work for somebody else.
That is the thing with Tamco. when it comes to family. And that was the thing with what I went to after that. I'm not, and that probably was the biggest thing out of it. I'm not meant to be told what to do in that aspect. I do not respond well to it. I don't like it. And I don't want to sit there and fight for someone that doesn't have an understanding to understand my view.
Right.
So it's just not what I'm meant to do. And I know now, after doing this, with you this entire time now, that this is what I'm meant to do, that this is what I'm good at. And so in October of 2023, I quit Tamco. In July of 2021, the very end of July, I moved to Texas in August of 2021. And then by October of 2023, when I was 42 weeks pregnant with Dahlia, I quit. And I had my reasons, and that's all that matters. And it just was not the right fit. And if I was going to do it, that's the timing. That's when it worked out, and that's when I had to do it.
So let's discuss this a little bit. So you quit, and we're scrambling. We're trying to figure out how we're going to do this, what we're going to do.
I do want to touch on that.
On the 10th of October, what happened?
The 10th of October, I had Dahlia.
Yeah, Dahlia was born.
Right.
So
Actually, so you're right. She was born, and then, yeah.
Yeah, so we actually technically launched in November.
Yes. No, so Dahlia was born on the 10th, and I quit on the 17th. I quit on Caleb's birthday.
Right.
So something had come up, and I'm going to be honest, I had been thinking about it, and you know that. We had been talking about it. It just wasn't the right fit for me. Mentally, it wasn't the right fit for me.
Yeah, there was just a lot there.
Just a lot there, and I don't need to get into it, but it just wasn't the right thing. But I just want to explain this part because I think a lot of people don't understand it or believe it because they don't think it's possible. But she's born on the 10th. I have her at a midwife center. I'm back home within 2 hours of having her.
By the way, y'all, she had our daughter 100% naturally, no drugs.
Which I had my other two the same way.
Amazing. I mean, I was there, was part of it.
I don't think you've experienced.
I have not experienced that. I have helped give birth to a few of my other kids, but they were all loopy. They were on a lot of drugs. Tammy took no drugs, no nothing, and delivered our beautiful baby girl. And it was pretty amazing. Tammy's pretty tough.
And then was home within 2 hours after having her.
Yep.
So when I quit, she was 7 days old. And, it was, so then I quit and no one knew. And then, that was released that I quit. And then I was forced to come up with a game plan immediately. So obviously on the Tuesday that I quit, we already had ideas, but we didn't have anything set in stone.
We didn't have logos.
We didn't have anything.
Nothing.
It was an idea. We actually I had reserved the website just because I wanted to have it. But I didn't do anything with it.
Going back on that, we have probably 20 or 30 websites reserved.
Yeah, and if we come up with an idea, I literally were like, okay, well, just in case, because it's $11,
right? Go
reserve a website. So we've done that on multiple occasions. We just reserve it because it's $11, and I don't want someone else to have that idea. So anyways, I did reserve the website, and if someone searches that, they'll see that I reserved it, but that was just based off of an idea, and it wasn't something that I had the guts to do, to be honest. It was a lot. I'm pregnant. I don't, it's just like a lot to deal with, to even think about. And so it's a Tuesday, and I have to be in good spirits. It's Caleb's birthday. We have to go out to dinner.
Mm-hmm.
We do all the things we're supposed to do. He had a thing at school, and I don't really know how to go about telling the public. I don't know when the right time to tell the public is, so I don't do it until it's released. And then that Thursday is when it was released.
Yeah, and that became a storm.
And literally, you created the logo in between Tuesday and Wednesday. The logo's done. And the one that's the sticker on your computer right now, just the basic Revolt Auto Paint, and then the website was the logo that we had. That's all it was.
Right.
And then the Thursday that I was forced to state that I was no longer employed there, that I was doing this. And for people that think that this was being worked on the entire time, it was not. For people thinking that this was the idea the entire time, it was not.
Absolutely not.
You have to understand that my mentality and then mixed with your mentality is very fast paced.
Yeah.
And nobody would believe that this company was created as fast as it was created out of nothing.
Yeah.
It was out of necessity.
It was out of necessity,
the
100%.
fact that we have kids.
We had
have
a totally
house.
different plan in mind of how things were going to happen, and they just didn't happen that way. And that's life. That's what you have to do, especially when you're an entrepreneur. Life's going to kick you in the balls.
Right.
And it's up to you whether or not you're just going to stay there and lay down and keep getting kicked, or you're going to get up and kick back. And we chose to get up and kick back. And
so when people want to know,
we worked our ass off.
What does revolt mean? A lot of people think it's for different reasons. And revolt is literally a message about going against the status quo of like automotive paint is.
Yeah.
It's against everything that automotive paint stands for.
All the corporate bullshit,
all
the
myths.
Insurance bullshit, all those goofy fucking things that painters have to deal with all the time. Yep. It is definitely not aimed at one person or one entity or anything like that.
It is it's a movement.
It's the entire industry.
It's the whole thing. And that's the whole idea. And then it's also, even to some degree, a political statement.
Yeah.
It's just revolting against anything that is not what we stand for.
It's revolting against house paint companies selling you car paint that they've bastardized. It's against all that shit.
It's against all of it. And it's trying to create something that is more of a movement. It's kind of like the punk rock of paint, and that's literally the mindset, and that's literally just what it stands for. It's not against any one person, like you said. It's literally a movement.
Now, we were kind of in the right place at the right time. It's very weird how it happened, how we were able to, have the right connection to be able to make us the products that we needed. It was like kismet.
Well, you also have to go back to the fact that you worked where I worked too.
Right.
And that you were let go.
Yeah, I was let go months before you were fired.
Right. Or months before I quit. You were fired
before you quit. So
Correct.
I was fired months before you were
quit. So
quit.
that gave you the ability to work and to test and to do things with
Right.
something that we didn't know was ever going to come into fruition.
Right. I was honestly trying to create my own thing.
Well, even like your original thought with Paint Cult 2 wasn't just a learning platform.
Yeah.
It was also a marketplace, and that's what
Right.
you've wanted to create.
Well, and so we'll touch base on that. So Paint Cult is actually the culmination of you and I coming together to create an educational platform. I had an educational platform before. I had done classes, and then you had done Takeover, and we were trying to figure out a way to create something like that online.
Right.
And what I wanted to do and what I'm working on doing is creating online courses that teach people everything about the industry, not just one little piece, or I want to teach everything from multiple instructors, and I've got some other people on board to do this, but I also wanted to sell the products that those people are using. So, like for instance, like Chad Kidder, if he's using the right airbrush paint, I want to be able to sell that. I want to be able to sell kits. So if he paints like a skull design as one of his online classes, I want to be able to sell you the whole kit that he used to paint that, the panel, everything.
Right.
And that was kind of my idea of where I wanted to take this.
So to go back, the connections that we have and who we're selling for, one, Custom Creative, I have known about for many years. I knew about them when they came out. They actually kind of started around the exact same time frame as Tamco. So they started in 2013, with doing their entire custom line. I started in 2014 doing the whole custom part of it and then moving on to that. So I kind of paid attention to them and knew who they were, and there were some different people using them. So I've had that experience with them. And then you were doing some different testing with it.
So then when I was let go, I was trying to figure out how I was going to make this work, and I knew that I was going to have some products to sell. So I chose products that the previous company was not selling. And then I also had some products from the previous company that I was allowed to sell.
Right.
And
which allowed you to create your own relationship with the person that we deal with who facilitates all of this.
Yeah. And again, by doing that and everything, we still didn't know that we were going to be able to create a paint company from that. Nope. We didn't know that they would manufacture stuff for us specifically.
Yeah. Because that was the biggest thing. They had to make it for us. Until
after you quit. And then we went and met and we said, hey, here's what we want to do. Can you do this for us? You know, I'm already buying some things from you. You know, we got to do it quick.
Right. So you have to realize that when all of this happened, it was the 19th that we launched saying this is what we're going to do. We weren't selling then.
Right.
We didn't start selling until the end of November.
Right.
So in that time frame, we had to have, because it takes 4 to 5 weeks for products to come from Spain, we had to have what we wanted created for us and sent to us
and
very quickly, very fast. You had been testing, so we knew that we liked what we were seeing.
Well, I knew that the manufacturer made good stuff, and I knew that they wouldn't make anything for us. I knew they wouldn't make anything, period, that isn't top notch.
Right. So we wanted custom creative who had a good name and had good products and everything that we liked to be the people to create things for us.
Yeah.
We had conversations with Jesus, who is the owner, we just liked everything. And the way that he kind of sees what we're looking for and the quality that we're looking for. And that was the biggest thing, is like, it has to be the right quality. I come from manufacturing. I know what is expected. I know that I can't get behind something and use my reputation to promote something that would harm my reputation, because then I don't have a job doing what I'm doing. And to be honest, all of the connections, the reputation that has been built is the only reason I could leave like I did and create something. And the day we launch, do amazing.
Yeah.
And we absolutely did.
Jesus has been amazing. He even checks with us about once a week and he says, is there anything I can make for you?
Yeah. We are working on creating and releasing some new things, because he is constantly
I'm also constantly giving him ideas for the custom creative line. Me being an end user, you know, someone who pinstripes and airbrushes, I know what I want.
Right.
And like the custom creative pinstriping line is amazing.
Right.
They have some awesome stuff. I mainly use the urethanes now. The problem with the urethanes is simply that, you know, there needs to be a few more colors. That's it. Yeah. The products work great.
But people need to realize that Custom Creative has been around, like I said, since 2013. They're not a fly-by-night company. They are not a brand new company.
Right.
This is not the same product that you can go buy off a shelf from somebody else. These are made and curtailed to what we're looking for, to what I'm looking for, to the experience that I have, knowing the solids contents on things that we want, the UV content on things that we want. Having the top shelf clear developed has been over a year in the making.
Yeah.
It was done from the beginning, but wanting to know exactly what the testing would be, exactly what everything that we want.
And that clear came out so great. Obviously, you know, the price point was higher than we wanted it to be, but
it had to be.
It's an amazing product. Though.
And I realized
pricing, I put it up against any clear that's twice as much.
So I have people that have dealt with me for many years, and they have used everything I've ever had, and they use a top shelf clear. And to be totally honest, Tamco was a clear that would be finicky. You had to learn it. There was a learning curve. It's a reason I had to put so much effort into doing the tech videos that I would do, that I would do constantly every week.
It was a great clear. I mean, it still is a great clear, but you know, it's not always user friendly.
Right. So I do
you kind of have to figure it out.
That these clears are more user friendly in that aspect. Yeah. That said, the top shelf clear, it's just a lot of technology put into it. Right. It's just having the right flow additives, the right everything, the solvent package.
It's just the best.
It just melts in. It's just, to me, and whenever the top shelf idea, so if people wonder where that comes from, it comes from the idea of alcohol and having the best, and the fact that I want to have a tequila brand and I want it to be what would be considered one of the best tequilas. I'm very picky about what I drink. Yeah. And I only like the expensive, you know, bougie top shelf kind of tequila. And that was the idea for having top shelf in general, was We wanted the clear to be the best it could be. We want our base that goes in that label to be the best possible base it can be. And we do care. Where a lot of companies, I feel like, take shortcuts because they can.
Right.
And they can justify it away because they're a big company and they can blame you and there's nothing you can do about it. A small company can't do that.
Yeah.
We have to make sure that we have the up and up. It has to be the best.
We can't risk failures.
No.
Because if you're having failures and you're getting refunds, it's going to hit us really, really hard.
Right. And a lot of people might not think that my reputation matters to me, but it does.
Absolutely.
And I absolutely care about what is said about me and how people try to create an image of me that is not accurate. And I want to make sure that if I put something on the market, that it's going to work the way that we say so.
Definitely.
And that it's not going to bite us in the ass and make us look like fools later. And to date, everything that we have done and everything that we have released has been curtailed to what we want. And it's been great. And, and the results have been, like one guy said today on the Facebook group that he's been doing this for 39 years and he's every single corporate paint line that there is. And he 100% believes that the Revolt line is the best line he's ever used.
Yeah.
And there will be people that will use it and they might not agree with that.
Right.
But the truth is the masses agree with that. And on a regular basis, the comments are so positive.
Yeah.
In fact, they're so positive that a lot of people I call bullshit.
Yeah. And let's go back to the beginning of Revolt real quick. So when we first started Revolt, obviously, like you said, it's coming from Spain. It takes minimum 4 weeks to get here. Yeah. We launch. We sell way more than we think we're going to sell. We run out of product. We're
shocked.
waiting on product.
I'm shocked how much we sell.
We're like, we don't have our shipping down yet. We had just hired somebody that, and we don't even have all our packaging down yet. We don't have, we had to figure out boxes.
We don't have
how dumb
location.
Is that? We're buying boxes from a box store that can't even sell us enough boxes because they can't keep up with us.
Right. And
this is a box store. We're buying them out of their boxes.
You have to understand that everything we were doing, we made look very put together. We
got very lucky that we happened to have someone local who could make labels for us. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Rex,
who's a customer.
He not only is a customer, but he does beautiful print work for us. We just had a lot of things, obviously, because we've been in this for a long time. We've been entrepreneurs for a long time. We know how to problem solve.
Right. And I've built and you've built a good amount of connections, people that you can call on when you need it.
Yeah.
And I'm not somebody that likes to do that unless I absolutely have to.
And now the company's basically 6 people. Mm-hmm. We've got 2 guys who are boxing pretty much full time. Mm-hmm. They work their asses off to make sure that the orders get out fast. Mm-hmm. We typically can ship same or next day. Mm-hmm. Obviously, in the beginning, we weren't able to do that. We were trying, but we weren't always able to do that.
We have become, in the time frame of starting, which was November of 2023, and now we're into 2025, we actually have become a much more well-oiled machine.
Absolutely.
Things work.
And we're continuing to refine everything. We're not quite ready to hire anybody else yet,
but we're having an amazing month. I will say that this month, even this month, has been one of the best months that we've had. And a lot of that is just constant work. It's constant work. And if people think it's not, I'm pretty sure they get it because they see us always answering questions.
You and I work from the time we wake up till the time we go to sleep.
Yeah. Like I was literally in the middle of doing this, answering a guy's question. Like we're recording this. It's 12:30 in a.m. right now.
It's the only time we can get without kids and a quiet
Dahlia
house
and everything. And I'm literally texting him and editing his invoice and dealing with him. He's in Utah. I'm in Texas. And, that's just how we operate. It's how I operate. And if I'm awake, I'm helping.
Right.
If I'm in the middle of the night feeding Dahlia, I'm helping.
Yeah. And we help with all paint brands as well. We're not. Obviously, we try to tech our own paint brand as much as possible. But if you have problems and you need some questions answered, we'll answer your questions to the best of our ability.
People see me answer questions all the time. And somebody saw me answer a Tamco question the other day, and they sent me a text, and they were like, I just wanted to give you some props and say I'm kind of proud of you for doing that. I'm like, I teched it for years, and no one else had helped them, so I'm going to help.
You understand, and you can help.
And it doesn't matter if I don't sell it now or if I used to sell it, or it doesn't even matter if I've never sold it. I still try to help wherever I can, and so do you.
So let's let's go back a second. You had talked about how you did SEMA with Tamco. We got the opportunity to do SEMA with Revolt, which is pretty crazy. You didn't get to do that till many years into Tamco,
Right.
and we did it, pretty early on with Revolt. How do you felt that went?
Amazing. So the lucky thing that we do have is the partnership that we have built with who helps us get our products and everything, which obviously everyone knows is PBE. And that's who we did the joint booth with. And that ability to be in the place that we were at the location that we were at, was a very good location. It's something I could only have dreamed that eventually Tamco could have got to be in that part of where it was. What's funny is that when I was at Tamco and I did SEMA, where we were was considered the bad section. No one wanted to be there, but
Right.
now that's the entire auto body section.
Yeah.
That's the place to be. But we had a very good spot. We were near a lot of attention. The booth had more attention as Revolt, being a newer company at the time of doing it, than honestly even any Tamco time had,
Right.
to be honest.
We were very fortunate. We got a lot of art from a lot of amazing artists.
Yep.
Hanging
It
on
was
the wall.
crazy. And
And
I'll
then we
say
had the booth of
no
the John
one's
Booth painted
booth.
bike. That of course got a ton of attention.
Yep.
We had multiple artists in there doing live painting. Freddie Villa, Kevin Kegler, John Booth. And then we had even people come from other booths, like Gooch and Tom. They
and
came
Ron
over
Jordan
and
would
painted.
come over.
Ron
and-
Jordan came and painted. Just the amount of talent we had on the walls and also live
Yeah.
was just tremendous. And it definitely attracted a lot of attention.
honestly had more attention, in my opinion, than anyone else's booth. No one's booth looked like
Yeah,
this
I feel like we got.
And everybody that
We
would
always
walk
had a crowd.
over, everybody that walked over would be like, "This is the number one thing I was told. I didn't get a chance to meet you because it was so crowded and there were so many people.
Yeah.
You were too busy. I couldn't talk to you."
Right.
And I was like, "Well, I feel bad. You could have just asked to talk to me." And they're like, "No, I didn't want to interrupt you." That's a good thing. It's a bad thing. It's because it doesn't allow you to connect with as many people as you want to. But the fact that the booth was so overwhelming with so many people is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it really did have a completely different look than everyone else's booth. No one's booth looked like ours.
Right.
We had black walls. It was huge. It literally looked like a really amazing looking tattoo studio. Like it had art everywhere.
Well,
If we had a section, we threw shit everywhere.
Yeah, I come from the art and tattoo world. A lot of people don't know my story yet, but
We'll get there.
I come from the custom paint art, hot rods. That's just my vibe. And I really wanted to create something that connected. And I wanted, it's silly, I wanted the wall to look kind of like an aircraft, like with the rivets and everything. Yeah. But I didn't want the wall to be the art. I wanted the art to be the art.
Yeah.
When you go into an art gallery, when you go into a studio or whatever, the art that's hanging on the walls is what speaks. It's not the walls. So typically walls are painted gray or beige. I didn't want that, but I didn't want it to be the thing. I wanted the standout thing to be the art, and therefore the standout thing to be the artists that use our products, and therefore the standout thing to be our products.
Right. But we had the glowing neon sign like it's in back of me.
Right.
We had that up, and no one else had that. And when that was on, you could be really far away and you could just see it.
Just punch you in the face.
It was awesome. So
okay, before SEMA though, we did Paint Cult, the first one. And that was amazing. We had around 80 people show up. We had students come from all over the country and even from Canada. We had some amazing instructors. And
I feel
that
like
was a
we
blast.
put that together also considering that
it was during
when we started.
Yeah.
Everything has been just very
chaotic.
Yes, everything's been very chaotic and put together, but at the same time, come together really well.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, I look back and I'm like, I mean, how did we do this? How did we did a good job with what we had. We did a good job with the timing. We did it.
Did it.
It just did it. Yeah. And sometimes that's what you have to do. You just
when
have
they say
to,
it's not that easy, well,
thing.
it's not, but you just do it.
Yeah. That's all we know to do.
And so now we learned a lot from Paint Cult. Obviously, we took a lot of lessons from Takeover and applied them to Paint Cult.
And then even there was lessons about trying to perfect it.
Yeah.
There was things that with Tamco that, like for instance, the moving around to all different kinds of classes was too chaotic for people.
Right.
So that was something that you had said, no, we don't want to do that. So with Paint Coal, it was you pick your class and you're in that class for a week and you do not roam.
And I love the idea of being able to roam and learn a whole bunch of things, but you're not going to learn a whole bunch of things if you do it. You're really not.
Right.
You're going to get a whole lot of experiences, but you're not going to learn really.
Right.
But if you spend, if you spend 5 days with someone like Gooch, or really any of the instructors really, but if you spend 5 days with any of these people, you're going to learn so much. Right. And you're going to get the opportunity to talk to everybody and hang out with everybody too. But you really, when you're in class, you really need to be doing your project.
You need to be staying where you're at.
And learning. Yeah. And you're going to learn so much.
But we're also changing that up like we talked about in the very first episode that we did. Bringing in the extra guest people. They're going to help come around and instruct. It's going to give you a taste of being in a different class because they're going to come bring some of those tips and tricks to you.
Yeah. So, and some of their experiences in this world.
Right. So one thing that I do want to say, I feel like we're trying to do is we're trying to not just be a paint company. A lot of times just paint companies just want to sell to you. They don't really care about educating you. The majors do have the things where they want to certify you into different things, but they're not really like teaching you. Right. I don't feel like they're trying to make you better.
Like the PPG program, I did that. And I did it too. Don't get me wrong, it was good. But it was completely revolved around learning their system mainly, and they're not really teaching you any skills. They're just teaching you how to use their products.
Right. And a very
what we're trying to teach with Paint Coal is skills.
Correct.
And it's always been about skill, and then the product comes with that
Correct.
Skill.
So obviously when we're doing this, we want you using our products, and you do use our products, and it gets you familiar with using them, how to use them, all of those things. But it's also about the education of it.
Right.
And if we both feel passionately about it, if you don't educate people, then it goes away and then it doesn't continue. And if these go away and you don't have a passion for it, we don't have a person to sell paint to.
Exactly. And so that's the benefit to us. You buying paint is a benefit to us.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Correct.
But you buying more paint because you're a better painter, or you enjoy painting more, or you're getting more clients because you learn some more tricks is better for us, and
Correct.
It's better for the industry as a whole.
And you might think that, you're only teaching custom paint and you only sell custom paint. And we don't, by the way.
No,
a lot of people ask on a regular basis, like, do you sell OEM colors? 100%.
Every day.
Do you do restoration? 100%. Yep. Do you do single stage? Yes, we do all of it.
Yeah.
We literally do everything that has to do with paint.
And we sell to collision shops.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we don't have mixing banks out yet or anything like that. So some larger collision shops may not be inclined to use us for those reasons.
But we sell pallets to people. We have people that buy. I had a guy who the other day, James Knight, does a lot of stuff with us.
Yeah.
And
he
had
orders
been buying
a ton of material.
Clears and primers, but he never had bought color.
Mm-hmm.
He never bought epoxy.
Right.
He never bought any of that stuff. But he did that recently, and he used it like an entire Revolt job, and he said how good it worked for him.
Yep.
So we 100% do all of it. But the idea with Paint Coal and the idea with teaching the custom aspect of it is a lot of who we sell to does collision, restoration. They do all of that during the day. But then at night, they want to do the custom aspect of it. And they do that in their garage. They do that on their free time. So this allows
a lot of side jobs, a lot of DIY kind of stuff.
This allows you to hone in on those skills that you're doing, maybe not for a living, but then people do try to make a living. They eventually do try to sell their art. There's one guy I've paid attention to in the groups who's in Virginia, and he only started doing this and kind of learning. I've seen him in the Custom Paint for Beginners group, and now he's in the Revolt group and become a customer. But he just recently got pretty quick into where he's now selling his stuff. He has people come to him and say, hey, can you make me this?
Right.
So there's people who literally don't start off doing this to make money, but then they have people commission them because they start seeing what they can do. So a lot of times people might not intend to start selling their custom work, but then they have the opportunity to do so.
Absolutely.
So for sure, there's so many opportunities by taking this class that you're going to achieve, whether it's going to be your day job or whether it's just your thing you do for fun.
Yep.
Or a release, something that you do as a hobby.
So what's next? What are we doing next? Obviously, we're getting ready for SEMA.
Honestly, that's it. Like after
the next SEMA,
after Paint Coal, then it's got to be full-fledged SEMA.
Yeah. So Paint Coal.
Which, by the way, we have not announced. We are doing SEMA again.
Yeah, we are doing SEMA
and
again.
The booth is going to be bigger. It's going to be 10 feet bigger than last year.
And we have no idea how it's going to look or anything yet. We haven't even started that. As an artist, I think about things all the time of how I want it to look, and I have some ideas, but until paint coat's over, I'm not really going to put that much of my mental bandwidth into it.
Right.
And then another thing we're going to do, so I'm trying to also launch Paint Cult as far as the online classes, but we're also going to start doing some smaller classes, which we had done some locally, and then I also did some in Florida with like Freddie Villa and stuff. We're going to start trying to organize more smaller classes around the U.S.
And the idea, something that we've been talking about, is also trying to sponsor some more classes that are taking place that aren't Paint Cult classes.
So if you're wanting to put on a class yourself, email us, talk to us.
Right.
We'll work
and
with
we're
you.
not
We'll
going to say
you.
that we're 100% going to do every single person that asks us.
We can't do everything,
but
obviously.
it is our goal to further the education in custom paint.
Yeah.
And if we can do that by you using our products, then we're happy to have that conversation.
And, like any company, we have an advertising budget.
Mm-hmm.
And I would rather give my advertising budget away to someone doing a class than spend it with Facebook, for instance.
Yeah.
I would rather get the marketing, in a much more wholesome way by sponsoring
I do want to touch on that for a
whatever.
second, by the way. I do want to say that. A lot of people that people are buying from right now are spending an ungodly amount of money
Oh, ridiculous.
on trying to reach you through Facebook like Facebook ads or Instagram ads or all of these different, or Google ads, and paying for Google ads. And you can see who's doing it and who's not doing it. I want to say all of that money that's being spent just to try to buy you as a customer is something that we're trying to not do by putting into an educational platform and doing things like that.
Which we've done Facebook ads, we've done things like that. But usually when we do a Facebook ad now, it's for the class.
Right. It's something for that. But like, we're not spending $1,000. Like the other day I looked at it, they want us to spend thousands of dollars to try to achieve to get customers.
It's ridiculous.
And I feel like we could put that money back into
the
donating to people that need to start getting into paint versus us just paying for
we would
you.
rather sponsor a paint job every once in a while.
So if you're wondering why you don't see a bunch of like Facebook sponsored ads for us with Revolt, it's because we feel like we could do better with our time for free by answering your questions, by being present every single day. And I do feel like that's something someone else mentioned to me recently, and it's true. At Revolt, we are different in the aspect that we're constantly present and we do tech.
And most of these automotive paint companies are pretty faceless.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. You don't know what a lot of these people look like
And you may know some, but when it comes down to doing and being present and doing tech, real tech.
Yeah.
Every single day, it's not there.
Yep.
And with Revolt, you are getting that. You are getting hands-on help every day. Someone made a comment earlier about, your paint's too expensive compared to such and such. And they named them. And it's like, okay, well, those people don't answer your questions on a Sunday.
Right.
And they're not doing tech for you. And if something happens, good luck getting a hold of them because they're not going to help you. So that is something that you do get with Revolt. You get that constant hands-on, dedicated time to you. Doesn't matter what day it is. We're still there. We're still present.
You have a personal cell phone number for the owner that she will answer during a baseball game.
Like I did the other day.
If it's necessary.
And I'm answering tech and I'm doing, answering TikTok questions and all of this other stuff, every single day.
Yeah, it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got SEMA coming up. Obviously, Paint Cult's very, very, very soon. I think it's 12 days away?
Yeah. And I do also want to say that once we get past Paint Cult, a large amount of time and effort is going to be put into trying to revamp the website, refreshing it up.
Yes. We
have been so overwhelmed and so busy, we have not had the time to do it. That's why the website still looks basically the same as it did the day that we launched. It's not real different. And
you got to understand with us, our website is our storefront. We do not have a storefront at this time. So our website is our storefront. And it's going to constantly evolve. It's going to constantly change. We're going to constantly try to make it better and better and better and better.
But I have
more user-friendly.
I have an idea of what I want, and I'm going to try to strive for that and make it more user-friendly, make it where everything is much easily found than it is now. But that is going to be, so even prior to SEMA, our business is generated online. The online store has to be where the effort's being put because that's where our money comes from.
Absolutely.
So that is something that you guys will be noticing. I'm going to try to revamp it and make it better.
And then going back to the educational thing, I've been working on more videos, not only showing the product, but showing how to use the products.
Right.
And I'll be doing this with both the Revolt products and the custom creative products and any other product we use. So if you if you see a product and you're like, oh, I really want to see someone use this, shoot us an email, you know, and I'll put it on the list. I'll make sure it happens. Or if you have an
idea, like if you have an idea of you should show this or showcase how this works,
definitely
shoot us an idea.
And then we also have some new products coming out. We have a couple speed clears that are going to be coming out.
We're working on a new black epoxy. You guys have noticed that we haven't had a black epoxy. We are working on a new black epoxy.
And, you know, the flash clear is not made for everybody or every use, you know, and it's not a urethane. We've really wanted a fast urethane. So we've talked to, you know, Jesus, and we have two
ones coming out. We actually have one coming out within probably this week.
Yeah.
By the end of this week.
That's a great clear.
We've been testing it. We haven't talked about it because, as again, even like with Top Shelf Clear, we didn't talk about it till we were confident.
Yeah.
So we don't talk about it until we know it's going to be close around the corner. I can talk about this one because this is around the corner.
Right.
I'm waiting on your label design for it. But we are going to have a 2-to-1, same size kit as the Euro Clear. It's going to be 7.5 liters, but it's going to be a fast clear.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's good stuff.
Amazing gloss, no dieback issues, no solvent pop issues, just a really good clear.
And that another thing that we are curious about is, what products do you use that you don't buy from us
that we could make,
that we could either make or that we could sell?
Yeah.
We're not opposed to selling what you need.
Yeah.
You know, obviously we're limited on brands. You know, we sell some fillers and things like that already.
Or we have access to a lot of stuff.
We have access to a lot more
that we
stuff
don't even sell,
that we don't have on the site yet. And there's some stuff that I want to add. You know, there's stuff that we've added throughout the time we've launched.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to add stuff. But if there's something specific, you know, that makes your life easier, let us know. You know,
and we are working on like a chassis black. Someone had asked about that. We are working on a chassis black.
Yeah, we're working on a direct to metal
4-to-1 chassis black with about a 60-70% gloss.
Yeah.
So we are working on that.
Be like
People
a
have been
factory.
Asking. It's not going to be like a direct to rust kind of a thing like you guys are used to.
Yeah.
But it will be a direct to metal.
But let's be honest, direct to rust is not that great of an idea anyway.
And I don't like it. And to be honest with you, I don't even like it being direct to metal. I think that it should still go over an epoxy or a DTM primer. But that said, it still will work.
You know, in some instances, you know, me being a hot rod builder, I get it. Sometimes
you just want something fast and good.
I mean, like right now, I'm doing some stuff on my work van. I want to shoot through, you know, the little bit of frame that's visible.
Right.
I don't need to epoxy it. I don't need to go that far.
Right.
You know, I just need it to be black.
Right.
You know, so this is going to be the perfect product for that. It's going to be something that'll hold up a lot better than like, you know, like a spray can paint, but is also not as quite as labor intensive as, you know, taking it and epoxying it and all that kind of stuff. So
I have a bunch more colors coming out. I've been talking about that with the Velvet series.
Yeah, the Velvet series is so gorgeous.
So people are going to wonder, like, what's the difference between these colors you already had and the Velvet? The Velvet series is all much, I guess what's like luxurious look. It's just very silky is the right word. It's smoother pearls. It's not so coarse. It's not so chunky on some of those pearls like we have now.
They're just sexy.
Yeah, it's a different look. I'm changing it up a little bit when it comes to what pearls we're using, and that is what makes or breaks your candy pearls. So we have a bunch of those coming out. It's going to be like 13, 14 colors.
Yeah.
And we've already done 2.
Yeah.
So much more to come.
Well, as always, guys, we appreciate you guys. You guys have been amazing to us.
Yep. We would not be here. I would not be doing this. I would not be able to do something that I have always wanted to do.
Yes.
Without you guys, to be honest. So I'm very grateful and very fortunate.
Yep. Thank you for listening. And that's really all I got.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to the ramblings of
2 crazy people.
Yeah.
And all right.
Take care.
Bye.
Good night.